Why experienced gardeners never regret planting climbing roses. Most gardeners dream about creating a beautiful garden. A garden that feels welcoming, elegant, memorable. The kind of place people never want to leave. But honestly, many homeowners spend years chasing that dream. Buying flowers, planting shrubs, redesigning flower beds, trying one idea after another. Yet something still feels missing. That matters more than people realize, because the most beautiful gardens often have one thing in common: vertical beauty, height, layers, living walls of flowers. And that's exactly where climbing roses enter the story. Now here's the hidden truth. Experienced gardeners rarely regret planting climbing roses. In fact, many wish they had planted them sooner. That changes everything, because climbing roses don't simply add flowers to a garden. They transform entire spaces. Plain fences become living walls. Ordinary trellises become focal points. Simple entryways become unforgettable. And somehow, the entire property feels more expensive, more established, more romantic. Now here's where things get interesting. One reason on today's list explains why climbing roses often become the most photographed plants in the garden. Another reveals why they continue improving year after year. And the number one reason may completely change how you think about landscaping forever. Experienced gardeners understand something important. Some plants fill space. Climbing roses create experiences. And, honestly, that's a completely different level of gardening. Imagine this. A warm summer evening, hundreds of roses cascading across an arbor, soft fragrance drifting through the air, golden sunlight filtering through the blooms, butterflies moving from flower to flower, guests walking beneath the flowers and immediately smiling. And somehow, the entire garden feels magical. That's what today's video is all about. The real reasons experienced gardeners never regret planting climbing roses. So before you decide what to plant next season, stay until the end. Because one of these reasons may completely transform your garden. There's a reason climbing roses have remained beloved for generations. Few plants combine beauty, fragrance, structure, and emotion so perfectly. Masses of flowers, elegant growth, vertical interest, seasonal drama, and a feeling that becomes stronger every year. That emotional payoff becomes enormous. Especially for homeowners who want their garden to feel special, not just attractive, spatial. But here's what most beginners don't realize. Climbing roses aren't really about roses. They're about transformation, transforming walls, transforming fences, transforming patios, transforming entire landscapes. And once experienced gardeners witness that transformation, they almost never regret planting them. So let's begin with one of the biggest reasons climbing roses continue winning the hearts of gardeners all around the world. Reason 7. They make ordinary structures look extraordinary. This is often the first thing homeowners notice. And honestly, it's one of the biggest reasons experienced gardeners never regret planting climbing roses. Because most gardens contain something unattractive. A plain fence, a bare wall, an aging trellis, a simple arbor, something functional, but not particularly beautiful. That matters more than people realize, because those structures often occupy large portions of the landscape. They're impossible to ignore, and yet many homeowners don't know how to improve them. Now here's the hidden truth. Climbing roses don't just grow on structures, they transform them. That changes everything, because suddenly, the fence disappears beneath flowers. The wall becomes a living tapestry, the arbor becomes a destination, and the entire garden begins feeling completely different. Experienced gardeners understand this. Some plants decorate. Climbing roses redefine. Now, here's where things get interesting. The transformation becomes more dramatic every year. The first season may be modest. A few canes, a few blooms, some promise. But by the third or fourth year, everything changes. The structure becomes covered. The flowers multiply. The visual impact explodes. And honestly, most homeowners underestimate just how powerful that transformation can be. Now imagine this. A plain wooden fence stretching across a backyard. Fonctionnel. Necessary. Forgettable. Then imagine the same fence covered in hundreds of soft pink roses, flowers cascading from top to bottom, fragrance drifting through the air, butterflies visiting throughout the day. The fence hasn't changed, but the entire garden feels transformed. That's the power of climbing roses. Now here's another hidden benefit. Vertical flowers draw the eye upward. The garden feels larger, more layered, more sophisticated. Experienced gardeners understand. Height creates luxury, and climbing roses provide height beautifully. That changes everything. Now here's something many beginners learn too late. One climbing rose can often create more visual impact than dozens of smaller flowering plants. Not because it's louder, but because it occupies space differently. It creates architecture. Living architecture. Expert tip. Position climbing roses where they can soften hard structures such as fences, pergolas, walls, or entry arches. That's often where the transformation feels most dramatic. Now imagine this. A summer evening. Roses cascading across a garden arbor. Golden sunlight filtering through the blooms. Guests pausing beneath the flowers. And suddenly, an ordinary structure becomes the most beautiful part of the entire garden. And honestly, that's just the beginning. Because the next reason experienced gardeners love climbing roses may be even more powerful. It has nothing to do with flowers, and everything to do with time. Reason 6. They become more beautiful every year. Most flowers peak quickly, then decline. Annual flowers disappear at the end of the season. Many perennials remain relatively similar year after year, but climbing roses are different. And honestly, that's one of their greatest strengths. That matters more than people realize, because climbing roses reward patience. The first year is often about establishment, roots, structure, growth. The second year becomes more impressive. The third year even better. And then something remarkable begins happening. The plant starts becoming what it was always meant to be. That changes everything. Now here's the hidden truth. Many homeowners judge climbing roses too early. They expect instant results, immediate perfection. And experienced gardeners understand something different. The real magic happens later. Now here's where things get interesting. Every season adds more structure, more canes, more flowering potential, more visual impact. The plant gradually develops into something impossible to buy fully mature at a garden center. A living masterpiece built over time. And honestly, that's one reason gardeners become emotionally attached to climbing roses. They don't simply watch the plant grow, they watch it evolve. Now imagine two gardens. One relies entirely on seasonal flowers. Every year starts over. The second includes mature climbing roses. Each season builds upon the previous one. The garden gains character, history, presence, and the difference becomes enormous. Experienced gardeners understand this. Some plants are purchases. Climbing roses are investments. That changes everything. Now here's another hidden benefit. Mature climbing roses often create flower displays that younger plants simply cannot match. Hundreds of blooms, sometimes thousands. Entire walls covered in color, fragrance filling large portions of the garden, and honestly, the visual effect can be breathtaking. Now here's something many beginners learn too late. The years pass anyway. And 5 years from now, you'll either have a mature climbing rose or wish you had planted one. Experienced gardeners understand that lesson well. Expert tip: don't focus entirely on first-year performance. Think about what the plant will become 3, 5, or even 10 years from now. That's where climbing roses truly shine. Now imagine this. A climbing rose planted years ago. The structure completely covered, flowers cascading in every direction. Visitors asking how long it took to become so beautiful. And realizing the wait was worth every minute. Because the next reason experienced gardeners never regret planting climbing roses is something few other plants can provide. Pure romance. Reason 5. They create a level of romance few other plants can match. This is where climbing roses become unforgettable. And honestly, it's one of the biggest reasons gardeners fall in love with them. Because some plants are beautiful. Some plants are practical. Some plants are reliable. But very few plants create emotion the way climbing roses do. That matters more than people realize, because the gardens people remember aren't always the most expensive. They're the gardens that make them feel something. And climbing roses have been doing exactly that for centuries. That changes everything. Now here's the hidden truth. When people imagine a dream garden, climbing roses often appear in the picture. Rose-covered archways, flowering pergolas, stone walls draped in blooms, garden gates framed by cascades of flowers. And honestly, there's a reason those images appear over and over again, because climbing roses create atmosphere. Now here's where things get interesting. The effect becomes strongest when roses are grown vertically. The flowers aren't confined to a flower bed. They surround you, rise above you, frame pathways, create living ceilings. And suddenly, walking through the garden becomes an experience, not just a stroll, an experience. Experienced gardeners understand this. The most memorable gardens engage emotion, and climbing roses excel at that. Now imagine this, a warm June evening, soft pink roses covering an arbor, golden sunlight filtering through the petals, a gentle breeze carrying fragrance through the air, the flowers swaying overhead, the pathway beneath glowing in warm light, and somehow the entire space feels magical. That's not accidental. That's the emotional power of climbing roses. Now, here's another hidden benefit. Romantic gardens never go out of style. Trends change. Design fashions come and go. But flowers draped across an arbor have remained beautiful for generations. Experienced gardeners understand. Timeless beauty always wins. That changes everything. Now, here's something many beginners learn too late. The best garden investments are often emotional investments. Plants that create memories. Plants that become landmarks. Plants that guests talk about long after they leave. And climbing roses often become exactly that. Expert tip: plant climbing roses near entryways, arches, pergolas, or seating areas where people can experience them up close. The emotional impact increases dramatically when visitors can walk beneath the blooms. Now imagine this. Guests entering your garden. The first thing they see is a rose-covered archway, flowers everywhere, fragrance drifting through the air. And immediately, the garden feels special. That's one reason experienced gardeners never regret planting climbing roses. But the next reason may be even more valuable, because it explains why climbing roses often become the centerpiece of the entire landscape. Reason 4. They become the focal point of the entire garden. Every great garden needs a focal point, a place where the eye naturally goes, a feature people remember, a reason for the landscape to feel intentional. And honestly, climbing roses create focal points better than almost any flowering plant. That matters more than people realize, because many gardens feel scattered. Beautiful flowers, nice shrubs, interesting plants, but nothing tying everything together. Nothing commanding attention. Nothing creating a sense of destination. That changes everything. Now, here's the hidden truth. Humans naturally notice vertical elements, tall structure, height, movement upward, and climbing roses use that instinct beautifully. Experienced gardeners understand this. The eye follows flowers upward, across arches, along pergolas, up walls, and suddenly, the garden feels larger, more dynamic, more complete. Now here's where things get interesting. A mature climbing rose doesn't compete with surrounding plants. It organizes them. The rose becomes the anchor. Everything else supports the display. And honestly, that's exactly how many professional landscape designs work. Now imagine a garden filled with beautiful flowers. Then imagine the same garden with a climbing rose covered in hundreds of blooms rising above everything else. The difference becomes immediate. One garden is attractive. The other is unforgettable. That's the power of a focal point. Now here's another hidden benefit. Strong focal points make gardens feel more expensive, more intentional, more professionally designed. Experienced gardeners understand. Luxury often comes from structure, and climbing roses provide structure wrapped in flowers. That changes everything. Now here's something many homeowners discover too late. A single mature climbing rose can create more impact than dozens of smaller plants scattered throughout the landscape. Not because it's louder, because it's memorable. Expert tip: position climbing roses where they'll naturally draw attention from patios, windows, pathways, or entry points. A focal point only works when people can see it. Now imagine this, standing at the edge of your garden. The first thing you notice is a massive climbing rose covered in blooms, the flowers glowing beneath the evening sun, the entire landscape organized around that single breathtaking feature. And, honestly, that's why experienced gardeners keep planting them. But the next reason may be the one homeowners appreciate most after a long day, because it fills the garden with something you can't always see, but you can definitely experience. Reason 3. The fragrance transforms the entire garden experience. This is the reason many gardeners don't fully appreciate until the roses mature. And honestly, photographs can't capture it. Videos can't fully explain it. You have to experience it. That matters more than people realize. Because gardens are not only visual spaces, the best gardens engage every sense. Sight, sound, movement, texture, and fragrance. That changes everything. Now here's the hidden truth. A beautiful garden can impress people. A fragrant garden stays with them. Experienced gardeners understand this. Memories are often connected to scent, and few garden fragrances are more recognizable than roses. Now here's where things get interesting. When climbing roses mature, the number of blooms increases dramatically. Hundreds of flowers, sometimes thousands. And every flower contributes to the experience. A single rose smells wonderful. An entire wall covered in roses feels completely different. The fragrance drifts through the garden, across patios, through open windows, along pathways, and somehow the entire landscape feels alive. Now imagine this: a warm summer evening, the air beginning to cool, the sun slowly disappearing behind the trees, and a mature climbing rose covered in blooms releasing its fragrance into the garden. You sit quietly on the patio. A gentle breeze moves through the flowers, and suddenly, the stress of the day begins fading away. That's not just gardening. That's therapy. Experienced gardeners understand this. The most valuable plants often improve quality of life, not just appearance. That changes everything. Now, here's another hidden benefit. Fragrance encourages people to spend more time outdoors, more morning coffee on the porch, more evening walks through the garden, more time enjoying the landscape you've worked so hard to create. And honestly, that's one of the greatest rewards gardening can offer. Now, here's something many beginners learn too late. Not all climbing roses are equally fragrant. Some varieties were bred primarily for appearance. Others combine beauty with extraordinary scent. Experienced gardeners often seek out fragrant varieties specifically because they understand how much difference scent can make. Expert tip: plant fragrant climbing roses near patios, pergolas, seating areas, windows, and entryways where the fragrance can be enjoyed daily. That's where they create the greatest impact. Now imagine this: a rose-covered pergola, soft pink flowers overhead, fragrance drifting through warm evening air, birdsong fading as the day comes to an end, the garden feeling peaceful, comfortable, almost magical. And honestly, that's one reason experienced gardeners never regret planting climbing roses. But the next reason may be even more practical, because climbing roses allow gardeners to create breathtaking displays without sacrificing precious garden space. Reason 2. They create massive beauty without taking up much ground space. This is where climbing roses become incredibly smart landscaping plants. And honestly, most homeowners don't think about it until they see the results. Because space is limited, especially in modern gardens. Smaller yards, smaller patios, smaller planting areas. Yet homeowners still want dramatic beauty. That matters more than people realize, because every square foot of garden space becomes valuable, and climbing roses solve that problem beautifully. That changes everything. Now here's the hidden truth. Most flowering shrubs grow outward. They occupy valuable ground space. They compete with other plants. They limit design options. Climbing roses do something different. They grow upward. Experienced gardeners understand this. Vertical gardening is one of the smartest ways to maximize beauty. And climbing roses are masters of vertical gardening. Now here's where things get interesting. A single climbing rose can cover an entire wall, an arbor, a pergola, a fence section, all while occupying relatively little soil space at ground level. The visual impact becomes enormous, but the footprint remains surprisingly small. And honestly, that's one reason they're so valuable. Now imagine a narrow side yard, not much room for large flower beds, limited planting space. Then imagine a climbing rose covering the fence from end to end, flowers cascading everywhere, color filling the space, the area suddenly feeling larger, more inviting, more beautiful. That's the power of vertical gardening. Now here's another hidden benefit. Growing upward creates layers, and layers create depth. Experienced gardeners understand. Depth makes gardens feel larger and more sophisticated. That changes everything, because a small garden with layers often feels more impressive than a large flat garden. Now here's something many homeowners discover too late. Walls, fences, pergolas, and trellises are often underutilized opportunities. They're already there, waiting to become beautiful. And climbing roses unlock that potential. Expert tip: whenever possible, think vertically when planning your garden. Look for empty walls, fences, arches, and structures that could support flowering plants. The transformation can be extraordinary. Now imagine this: a compact backyard filled with flowers, not because the garden is large, but because beauty exists on multiple levels. Ground level, eye level, overhead, and right in the middle of it all, a spectacular climbing rose. That's one reason experienced gardeners never regret planting them. But the number one reason may be the most powerful of all, because it explains why climbing roses often become the plants gardeners treasure most for decades. Reason 1. They create legacy gardens that get better with time. This is the real reason, the deepest reason, and honestly, it's why experienced gardeners almost never regret planting climbing roses. Because climbing roses are not short-term plants. They're legacy plants. That matters more than people realize. Because many flowers provide beauty for a season. Some provide beauty for a few years. But mature climbing roses can become part of a garden's identity. Part of its story. Part of its history. That changes everything. Now here's the hidden truth. The best gardens are rarely built in a single season. They're built slowly, year after year. Plant by plant, memory by memory, and climbing roses fit perfectly into that process. Experienced gardeners understand this. Some plants are temporary. Climbing roses become permanent characters in the garden. Now here's where things get interesting. As the years pass, the rose grows larger. The flowering becomes heavier. The structure becomes more impressive. And the emotional connection deepens. Because you've watched it grow. You've cared for it. You've seen it transform the landscape. And honestly, that creates a different kind of appreciation. Now imagine a climbing rose planted today. 5 years later, it's beautiful. 10 years later, it's spectacular. 15 years later, it's legendary. Guests talk about it. Neighbors recognize it. Family photographs are taken beneath it. The plant becomes part of the property itself. That's something very few flowers can accomplish. Now here's another hidden benefit. Legacy plants often outlive garden trends. Styles change. Preferences evolve. New plants become fashionable. Yet climbing roses continue looking beautiful. Generation after generation. Experienced gardeners understand. Timeless beauty never goes out of style. That changes everything. Now here's something many beginners learn too late. the most rewarding plants are often the ones that improve with age. Not decline with age, improve. And climbing roses do exactly that. Expert tip: choose a location carefully before planting. Think long-term. Imagine what the rose will look like 10 years from now, not just next summer, because that's the future you're planting. So why do experienced gardeners never regret planting climbing roses? Because they transform ordinary structures, because they become more beautiful every year, because they create unmatched romance, because they become unforgettable focal points, because their fragrance transforms the garden experience, because they maximize beauty without requiring much space, and most importantly, because they create legacy gardens that improve for decades. That's the real secret. Climbing roses aren't just flowers, they're transformations, living architecture, memory makers, and honestly, few plants offer so much in return for a single planting decision. Now, I'd love to hear from you. If you could plant one climbing rose anywhere in your garden, where would it be? A fence? An arbor? A pergola? A garden gate? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoy discovering plants that bring timeless beauty to the landscape, subscribe right now, because the next plant we explore may completely transform your garden. And honestly, we're just getting started.